Hello and welcome. You are listening to an informed take on current events brought to you by law students and staff of Queen's University Belfast. This is LawPod.
Hi, I'm Alana Hughes and welcome to LawPod Student Focus. This is the second of our Student Focus episodes. We're continuing the conversation we started in the last episode about study choices and gender imbalances in family law. I'm joined by Seamus Mulholland, a family law specialist from the Bar of Northern Ireland. Hello Seamus, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Do you just want to talk briefly about your practice and your pathway to where you are now for our listeners?
Yes, well, I was looking back, so I saw the question that you'd asked earlier, why did I become a barrister? And I was looking back to when I actually made the decision to go down the law route anyway. And I think I can trace it back to a specific Sunday dinner.
Right, okay.
Where I was around the table with my family and we'd started to debate about something. And my mother said to me, I think you actually might like to go into law or politics, something where you have to have a bit of argument. And I'd always thought that I would go into computers or teaching or something like that. But slowly but surely the seed for law started to grow and I wanted to do something with it. And then whenever I graduated from Queen's, I thought, well, what am I going to do? Partly I thought maybe a PhD, but I also did the bar exam and I got it. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead with this for the time being. Mostly because I was happy that it meant I would be able to straddle two horses. I'd be able to continue to do some academic work if I could find it, but also practice at the bar. So that's what I decided to do. I was called to the bar in 2012. And then between 2014 and 2015, I was back at Queen's working on a project with Sarah Ramshaw and Catherine McNeely. Catherine McNeely, who's now permanent staff at Queen's. And we worked on a project about family law as well. So I got to do it from an academic and a practical standpoint.
And really blend both of those aspects of your work together.
Absolutely,
really
they
well.
really did.
Yeah.
So the judges and practitioners that I was coming across in practice, I was now seeing for interviews and roundtable discussions at Queen's, and we were looking at how we might improve the situation for children, specifically in care and supervision order proceedings.
And that's amazing. It's a great way to keep yourself involved in what you love doing at university, the academia, but also start your career at the bar.
That's right.
And keep, try to get a good head start and everything.
Yes,
in terms of that way. Yeah.
It's something that the bar really facilitates because you're self-employed. You can do that. You have the choice about how much work you take on. And if you want to still do a bit of academic work, you certainly can do that. So I did that. And then this year I've been able to do some tutoring at Queen's and I've also done some lecturing at Ulster. So yeah, you certainly can do a lot of stuff if you go to the bar.
Fantastic. So I'm really intrigued to find out why family law. But first of all, I suppose a good place to start with the discussion might be if I said to you, family law is an area of law that only women should study or practice. It's not really an area of law that men should be involved in, which is obviously a myth. But what words come to your mind in response to that myth?
There's three different words that I've got. Well, first of all, it's pervasive, as in on the ground. Certainly, there's an element of reality to it. The reality is that there are a lot of women who practice in family law, and there are a lot of men who practice in criminal law, and that's slowly changing, and that's certainly a good thing. So it's been pervasive historically, but it's been deeply regrettable that that's been the case because, I know that there's been great pushes that the bench should be representative of society, and I think it's only right that the bar should be as well. We can't have hermetically sealed bars, that the criminal bar is only male and the family bar is all female. For the last while, that hasn't been the case in any event. We've definitely been making progress that way, but I think clients and everyone benefits from having society properly represented in the family court. And without proper representation on all the different characters that humans have, then you don't get a properly representative decision making, I don't think. So as I say, first of all, it's pervasive but regrettable that that's been the way of it, but it's certainly changing. And I know that amongst my colleagues, I'm just approaching 6 years call, plenty of my young male colleagues do family work and enjoy it massively.
Yeah, and I suppose if you start to delve into the myth a little bit more and think about why it is that people seem to think that men can't do this work or men shouldn't do this work, or more that women are the only people that should be doing it.
Yes.
Is it because it's associated with emotions very heavily? It's associated with children. It's associated with complex issues within families, and women are just deemed to be more appropriate to deal with that sort of thing. Obviously, we would dispute that. So in disputing that, what key attributes do you think that you need as a family law barrister, regardless of being a woman or regardless of being a man, but just to be able to do your job and do it well?
I think, first of all, you have to look at the reality. The reality is that most family issues are contact issues with children, and normally it will be a mother and a father, so there will inevitably be
both
a male
represented there.
Yeah. So it does seem strange. I've spoken to especially fathers who find it frustrating that they only see women around the courts, and they think that's just odd that they don't see as many men as they would have liked to have seen. I think that what any barrister, male or female, needs to bring to a family law case is clarity, because the cases are incredibly complex. I said to you that I worked on that project with Catherine McNeely and Sarah Ramshaw, and what we were looking at was improvisation and how you improvise in cases. And ultimately what we found was that that's something that the best barristers do. So those members of the junior bar who wish to take silk are very good at improvising, so they don't go in with prepared things.
Reading off their cuff sort of thing.
No, there's no speeches to be made or anything like that. There, you go in and you deal with the situation that's there before you.
As it unfolds.
Yeah. And in comparison to other areas of law, family law is certainly more difficult in the sense that there is not a single crystallized event. So in criminal law, you can say a crime took place on such and such a date. In tort law, you can say, well, an injury occurred. But in family law, you can't say that. There's a family life that goes on for the duration of the case, and you have to have clarity to identify what the issues are and to take in everything that you're being told, but understand what the legal issues are and how you're going to improve the situation for the child who's the subject of the proceedings. But you have to do that in a very tactful way, because your clients are going to want to tell you everything about their lives, and that's an incredibly privileged position to be in, to get access all areas and to find out how their lives are going. But working with that's incredibly difficult because it's just such a volume of material to work through.
Yeah, and as you say, they want to tell you everything about their lives, and whilst that's, as you say, incredible experience, and they place a lot of trust with you in doing so, not everything is relevant to the case, and it's your job then to decide what is relevant based on the legal knowledge that you have. So that's sort of what I'm interested in as well. What do you find legally challenging about your work within family law? What legal issues? And you spoke about the research project, and I mean, if you could tell me more about that'd be really interesting.
Well, it's the single biggest thing that came out of that project was the need to improvise in court, especially in family cases, because you simply don't know until you get to actually running a case what all is completely relevant. I mean, sometimes clients won't have told you something that actually turns out to be incredibly relevant, because they may be very upset about it, or they just didn't see it a certain way until there's a challenge made against them. They didn't look at their parenting and think about it like that. But the single biggest contribution that I think lawyers of any kind, but especially barristers if they're running the cases in the end, the biggest contribution you can make is to bring the rigour of the law to it as early as possible, in terms of, can we actually get a workable agreement in place to solve this? So in one sense you're bringing the law to it, but not the harshness of the law, as in you're trying to avoid a really rough hearing where everyone beds down in contractable sides, and life becomes much harder. If you can work out a settlement of some sort earlier on that everyone can live with, that's a big achievement. Also, if you can't do that, then you bring in a third person. You bring in the judge. No one knows what the judge has been thinking to date, what the judge is going to do. So, counsel for two sides can find that actually the judge brings in some other aspect of the case that they weren't expecting to be there, and that complicates things and makes it more difficult. Even the process itself, cross-examination is not a pleasant experience for anyone. So if the lawyers can sort it out before that, that's certainly to be commended.
So would you agree then, if I said, based on what you've just said, the legal challenge in your work, a lot of it revolves around making the law work for people, and making the law, or allowing the law, facilitating the law to provide the remedy and the the answers and the solution to these situations that people really need, and just to allow them to continue on with their life.
That's exactly it. It's the softness and the hardness of the law. You're trying to avoid the hardness of it, as in you don't want to upset people more than necessary. If you need to have a hearing, then you simply have to have it. That's last resort. But you're using the softness of the law to guide people through. So inevitably what happens is a relationship is broken down, and there's a lot of hurt there for some reason, whatever's gone on to break down the relationship. But the focus has to be on the child who is the subject of the proceedings, and just making people aware of where the law starts, that the law's approach is that a child should be surrounded by as many loved people as possible. So everyone who wants to have a loving contribution to a child's life, mum, dad, grandparents, cousins, all of them, the more people you can surround the child with, the better. And just knowing that that's where the law's starting from helps. So if you're the parent who's kept the children post-separation, knowing that there's a presumption that there should be good contact with the other parent, that helps to get it clear so that everyone's aware of where the law's starting from, and that it's not really a matter about your relationship breakdown. That's separate. That's what Brendan deals with in Sewer Relief.
Yeah.
But when we're dealing with the children, it's what's in the best interests of this child. And it's just offering the parent who has residency for the time being the confidence to know that that's what this is about. This one issue is how can we best look after your child and move forward.
Yeah, and trying to make every party involved realise that, that the child is really fundamentally the most important thing here. Right. And that's what we're all here for. We're all here to secure some sort of best scenario situation for the child, and then everybody can start to rebuild and move on in their own directions. So I suppose the law has a massive role to play there for people, and it really does help, I hope, in many situations, to allow people to start to rebuild their lives and their families separately, or whatever the case may be. Emotionally, what sort of challenges do you face? I know you've talked about family breakdown, contact and residence disputes or whatever else, and obviously those sort of issues carry massive emotional burdens for the parents and all parties involved, and for the children as well. So what sort of emotional challenges do you face then, and how do you go about balancing those with the legal ones and sort of overcoming them in the work that you do?
There's no getting away from the fact that family law is emotional.
Yeah.
It simply is. The courts only become involved, and certainly barristers only really become involved when things have got bad enough that the parties can't come to an agreement between themselves. So you try to encourage that as best you can, and there are many weeks spent trying to resolve things before they ever go into a courtroom for hearing. But I think especially for the parent who's kept the children post-separation, it's a leap of faith to having faith in the person that they've fallen out with for some reason, to go, your relationship broke down with them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't still want the best relationship with their child. And it's reminding them of that and giving them the confidence to try it, but setting in place a framework as well that they feel they can do that, and things can be tried for a while to build back up a relationship if there's been some absence for a while by the other parent. Other difficult, for example, adoption cases would be terrifically difficult, because if you're for the parent from whom the child has been freed for adoption, that's obviously very, very sad for them, because the trust has taken the decision that adoption is really the only way forward.
And always the last resort.
Always the last resort, yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. So
that's incredibly emotional, because by the time you get to the trust taking that decision, generally things are quite bad, and that can be an incredibly onerous position to be in, because you're literally the last person standing between the parent and the child being taken away. So you have to make sure that they're heard properly, that what they want to say is heard, that everything's challenged that can possibly be challenged. That's one of the most emotional things. I think that's sad. On the other side of that, I think judges find freeing applications hard, but then they get to see the nice part of it, which is the child getting adopted into a happy family later on. As counsel, we actually step back after that. We're not involved beyond that, so we have to deal with that hard part and don't really get to see the nice part where the child actually hopefully is starting to progress into a new life. Yeah,
everything seems so difficult and emotionally onerous at those hearings, I'm sure, but then the product of it is a great placement and a happy life and of fulfillment for the child, but you don't ever get to see the product. You're involved in the factory of making the product, but then the product goes out to the shop and you never get to see it again. So
sometimes you can offer a little ray of hope,
right,
in the sense of some little bit of contact. That's subject to the adoptive parents' views.
For the birth parents?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Sometimes it depends on the individual case, but I mean, realistically, a child who's adopted at some point is going to want to know about their history, and that can actually be a good thing. But also sometimes it's with vulnerable parents saying to them, you've got difficulties that you need to work through, and it's not the end of the road. You know, you might, especially if they're young, they might want to have children in the future, but really, if we could work on improving your situation and your lot first, then any child who comes behind that is going to benefit from the improvements that you were able to make. So step back and take a little time to help yourself.
And I mean, in that sense, does your job give you a really good insight into just human relationships and like the amount of, you know, love that a parent could have for a child, even if the parent is in absolutely no way fit or ready or in a position to provide the child with what they need, but they still absolutely adore it.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, and that it's just a real insight into, you know, just that element of how much human relationships and interactions feed into this area of law.
Yeah, you get the full spectrum of society. You get people who are incredibly intelligent, have everything that life could ever offer you. But then you get people who maybe have difficulties with mental health or educational needs, whatever, or people who've been brought up in really severe poverty and it's really hard for them. And you see how hard life can be sometimes. But before you even get to the stage of adoptions, there's other measures that you might want to identify as well, like so supports that could be put in place to try and improve things. Because again, the starting point in family law is that the best people for a child to be with are their family, and there's a duty on the state to try and provide supports to improve that. So before you would get to the stage of adoption, you would hope that all those avenues have been explored, and that's your job as a lawyer to make sure that they are. Like
absolutely no stone unturned.
Exactly, that's it. Adoption's definitely last resort.
And are you do you do many adoption cases? Are you involved in like that line of work? Do you do a lot of that? Or
I've done a few, but again, you spoke with Brendan, he would have more experience of those sorts of cases.
Yeah. I mean, what Brendan talked about, he said, 90% of the work that he does is family law work, and he never intended it really from the beginning to be that way. That was just sort of how it worked out for him, and not, he's happy enough with that. He told us, but I suppose from your point of view, how did you choose family law then whenever you were an undergraduate, or how did that come about?
I did choose to do family law whenever I was an undergraduate because to me, well, in law there's two types of law. There's criminal law and there's civil law. Realistically, there should be a third type, which is family law. I know it's a form of civil law, but it's such a huge area in and of itself.
Out on its own.
Absolutely.
Recognised by itself.
It should be. And it's a massive practice area. So I chose it partly because it was fascinating in its own right, but also I was very lucky that Sarah Ramshaw, who I subsequently worked with, was the lady who took that course. So I was very keen to participate in anything that Sarah participated in, to be quite honest. But then whenever I graduated and got the bar exam, I spoke to some judges actually about who I might choose as my master, and they said, well, try family. I mean, often you find whenever judges are appointed to the bench, they end up going into family law first because it's such a wide area to get your bearings in, and you really see so many different types of people.
The spectrum that you talked about, yeah.
Absolutely. So they go in and they learn how to deal with lots of different people there. So Brendan became my master, and what he did was largely ancillary relief. So I saw a lot of that work. And ancillary relief work is excellent work if you can get it. At my stage, I'm going into year 6, so it's not something that barristers of my age really are doing a lot of, but certainly I think Brendan was called in
1996.
96, yeah. Mm-hmm. Plenty of barristers of his vintage would do it, and it's very rewarding work. It's probably much more lucrative than other areas of work because by its nature you're dividing up marital assets. So that certainly, if you can do ancillary relief and mix in other areas of family law, it would be very rewarding.
And I mean, as you progress through your career, do you think that's something that you would look forward to in like your more, whenever you get further up and you're more experienced, and
it would be
yeah,
fun.
you would be
to do.
interested.
It would give completion, for example, because I would often do divorces, and I've been asked sometimes to do ancillary relief, but because it's such a niche area, I would always say actually maybe my master or someone like that would be better, just because it's a niche all in and of itself. But I certainly would like to see clients
bring you around in full
through
cycle.
divorce, the family proceedings about the kids, and ancillary relief, the full package complete. But
I mean, if I was to ask you now, is there anything you regret about specialising in family law?
No, it's so rewarding. I can't emphasize enough the privileged position you're in. In no other area of law do you get such access to people's lives. You know everything, warts and all, about how their lives go, and it's fascinating to see that. I genuinely can't think of, aside from maybe close friends, where you have an idea of how their lives are behind closed doors. But in this case, you actually get behind closed doors and you get to see it, and you're getting the truth of it as well, because it's an adversarial system. So there are now parties who disagree with each other about what's been going on behind closed doors. So you're going to get to the truth of it. That's something that I really enjoy, is that you're going to hopefully get to the truth of what's been going on.
And do you find fulfillment in the amount that you help people?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
If you know that you can't help people as much in any other area of law. In criminal law, the best you can do is you mitigate the sentence, you get the lowest sentence possible. Certainly, you protect people. All times you get really good results, and you've protected an innocent person, and I'm sure that feels well, but that's not every case. In civil law, you fix whatever's been damaged, injuries, etc., and you try your best for your client. But in family law, you actually get a live thing that continues to grow and develop down the line, and you get to influence that a lot. And you're in a privileged position as a lawyer, because people will listen to you and follow your advice. And then the family life goes on, and you hope that it gets better for them after that. Sometimes it doesn't, and guess what? They come back to you and you try and fix it then.
You've got like a real platform to try and instigate changes that are really going to hopefully benefit people for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Unless they come back. But if they come back, you just try again and keep trying and trying and trying until it works. And hopefully someday it will.
Yeah. There's a privilege too in seeing the difficulties that arise in family life. I mean, I'm only 27. But I hope that whenever I come to settling down to have my own family, that I see the difficulties that other families have gone through, much more mature people than me. But you sort of see warning signs and how not to do it if you can possibly avoid it. Obviously, barristers and judges sometimes divorce and have these problems themselves.
Of course.
But there's a reward in having seen it all, hopefully before I actually get to do it.
Yeah, that's what I find so interesting, the way you talk about, and back to what I said earlier about just the human relationships and just humans in general and emotions and all of the things that we go through in life, and the issues that we face, and as families, the issues that we try to overcome together, and then sometimes we don't, sometimes we do. I just find personally the whole thing extremely fascinating, and I think if you're in any way inclined to help people, to be interested in how other people need you and how you might be able to help other people through things that you have never gone through but that you can imagine going through, because everyone can, then you're a perfect fit for family law.
That's it. Regardless
of whether or not you're a man or a woman. And there's certainly absolutely no reason why men should feel, especially at undergraduate level, which is the level I'm at now, that it's not for them.
No, and certainly if you're male or female, it doesn't matter. But if your interest is in advocacy and telling people's stories, there's no greater story to be telling, because the intricacy of family law is so complex. The requirements to improvise on the spot, your client staying there in court and you're having to respond to stuff. It's so complex and involves so many skills. You simply couldn't prepare for it.
Yeah, whenever we spoke to Brendan earlier, we spoke about how a brief might land on your desk and the paperwork, might tell you everything that you need to know, but you're not going to really get a full picture until you turn up and meet your clients and hear from them in person and sort of start to build the picture of their lives.
That's right.
To the stage that they've come to you at, so that's just fascinating, getting in the car in the morning and not really knowing what you're going to find whenever you get to work. Every day is different.
Exactly.
And every single case is different and all the circumstances are different.
Yes.
So you can't get bored.
No, you can't. And because of the emotional nature of it as well, you hear their story generally a little bit before it. You don't know everything because there will be stuff that comes out in the hearing for the first time, but your job is to make sure it comes out as best as possible. A lot of clients will be all clammy and go, I don't want to be in the witness box. This is horrible. I'm going to cry. The judge isn't going to believe me. All this here. They're so worried, and they feel like they have to go in and make a speech, that they're there to beg for whatever it is that they're trying to get. And your job is to calm them down and remind them, no, that's actually my job, is to take you through this and make sure that your story comes out and it's heard properly, that your tone's right, so that you don't get upset, and to relax you into it. And that's a very rewarding job, and it can only be done with people. It's not like some aspects of other aspects of civil law where on the papers you know what the damage maybe is because there are medical reports and things like that there, and you can challenge that a bit. But the dynamics of family law are just something else compared to compared to criminal law or any other aspect of civil law. Yeah,
and as you say, on in regards to tort law, someone falls, that they've broke their leg, they've broke their leg, and it's a broken leg for anybody. But someone is going through a divorce, they're always going to have a different, like the emotions that you feel and the hurt or pain that you feel by a certain situation that happens to you that's individual to you inside can't really be objectified like that. It's so subjective, and everybody deals with it differently and processes it differently. So it's so different than other areas of law in that sense as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just one size does not fit all.
No, and you can't really countenance just how wide your influence will go, because if you get a good setup for a family, then they go into society, they integrate, they've got uncles, aunts, grandmothers, grandfathers. The children go to school. How they behave in school will be affected by what home life is like for them, how well the teacher can teach, all that there stuff. It really just seeps out everywhere. So it's a growing thing that you set it up as best you can, and then you sort of stand back and hope that it goes well for everyone.
So just to sum up, if you want to get yourself a career that is in an area of law that's all-consuming, demanding, challenging, stimulating, fulfilling and rewarding, family law is definitely an area of law for you then.
Absolutely, and there is a great need for more men to participate in it. If you're looking for a niche to go into, there's one there, surely.
Thank you so much, Seamus, for coming in today and for chatting with me, and I hope our listeners to this podcast will be as inspired and motivated as I am to go forth to a career at the bar and study family law. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have been listening to LawPod, an informed take on current events brought to you by the law students and staff at Queen's University Belfast. This episode was produced by Alana Hughes and Richard Somerville. Our theme music is by Colonel Chocolate and the Justice Triangle. LawPod is funded by Queen's Law School and the Queen's Annual Fund. Thanks to Seamus Mulholland, our guest, for joining us. You can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook and Twitter at QUB LawPod. For more information, you can also visit our website, lawpod.org, and have a look in the show notes about the topics covered today. You can find us on iTunes or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. I'm Alana Hughes, and this was LawPod.